Hello ladies and gents, today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We are going to be going into the garage gym. I had a previous video on the setup and giving you guys a look around my garage gym. If you haven't watched that already, then I would recommend going to give that a watch. But today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be jumping in there and I'm going to be taking you guys through a Hyrox session. However, first I've got to clean the place up because it's looking very much like a garage. That looks like a garage, it doesn't look like a gym right now, so I've got to go and tidy that up. But the idea of the video today will be to explain the kind of Hyrox sessions that I've been doing, primarily the strength session that I do 2 times a week, a full body push and a full body pull. And today I'm going to be doing the pull session, so posterior focused on back, hamstrings, glutes, calves. I'll start with a bit of mobility, some plyometrics, priming, getting myself ready for the session. I will then move on to some strength components, upper body and a lower body, and they will be done in contrast training style. I'll explain what that means later on. We'll then move on to some single leg movement, a couple of accessory movements, and then we'll go on to the Hyrox finisher, which usually lasts anywhere from like 12 to 15 minutes, where I will utilize an erg alongside some of the Hyrox movement patterns, you know, things like burpees, kettlebell swings. But first things first, I've got to go out there and clean the garden, so enjoy that part. Doesn't look amazing, but I've given the walking lunge platform, aka the AstroTurf, a clean up. Now to go into the gulag. This was the wind, it just blew it open and almost smashed it. Let's see how bad it looks in here. Oh, it's not so bad actually. There are a few objects in here which I would rather weren't in here. One of them being that bike because it's terrible, that watering can, that child's tricycle, and that underlay. Right, the place is looking a little bit better now. Sometimes I would just go straight into my plyo and mobility stuff, but because it's the middle of October, it is a little bit colder and this garage gym does not have any heating, doesn't have any insulation either, so it's cold. So I'm gonna jump on the good old rowing machine and I'm gonna give myself a few minutes of a warm up just to get stuff cracking. By the way, I am someone that's been looking for a pair of comfortable shorts for Hyrox for absolutely ages. Struggled to really find anything that was like 1 comfortable but 2 actually looked alright. And I've just tried the MyProtein. I'm not sponsored by MyProtein, by the way, unfortunately. If they fancy it, then, you know, crack on. But these are like the tempo shorts, so the 2-in-1 tempo shorts. So you've got this layer here and then you've got the under layer, and it's super comfy for someone that's got thunder thighs and they kind of chafe together a little bit. I would recommend giving these a bash. So firstly, it is super important to warm up, but warming up isn't just warming up. It's also priming and it's mobilizing for the session that you're about to do. And it's also about working on some qualities that you may not usually develop. For me, plyometrics, that's that jumping contact with the ground, making sure that my foot strike is efficient and making sure that it's powerful is massively important. Contact in the ground with a stiff and rigid ankle and Achilles is really important because the running that you're going to be doing during a Hyrox is typically going to be under fatigue, and things like your calves and your ankles get tired really, really quickly if they're not strong and they're not stiff. And if they're stiff, they're able to propel you back against the ground with force and with efficiency. So you're not all over the place and your running gait doesn't get upset after just 2K into the runs. If you've watched my last video on the gait analysis, you'll kind of understand that if our running gait changes because we're fatigued, it then can create overuse injury from running in a different way, or it can basically just create too much fatigue and, you know, your race could be over because one of your calves blow up. That's why plyometrics, calf work, and this accessory stuff that we do at the start of the session is super important. So next up, we are on to some of the compound work. So we've got 2 compound movements, but they're going to be supersetted with a kind of plyo power movement. The method of training that we're using here is called contrast training. It's kind of popularized within team sports, footballers, rugby players, things like that. It is a really good way of developing maximal strength, but then also being able to develop power alongside that. How it usually works, you will pick 1 compound movement. So that could be something like a deadlift, like I'm about to do. It could be a squat, it could be a bench press. We're going to do 5 reps here at a pretty heavy weight, and you're going to superset that with some sort of power movement. Today, because of what I've got available here, I'm going to do a dual dumbbell snatch. I'm going to be moving with explosiveness and power, and that's only going to be for 5 to 7 reps. I love contrast training for a couple of different reasons. It allows you to do those heavy lifts and recruit those big motor units. And then the explosive movement afterwards then teaches your muscles that, yes, okay, we're moving heavy weight, but we're fucking moving it movement fast. In a simplified version of things, that's kind of how it works. And it's ideal for Hyrox because think of the movements that you have to do where you need to generate a lot of force and repeatedly generate that force, and it's heavy weight and it's those body sleds. That's exactly one of the most important parts. But this stuff transfers over into pretty much all the movements within Hyrox. There's nothing wrong with just doing proper strength training without the contrast, without the fast movement attached to it. That's still going to be beneficial, but I think this is a really nice way of tying in the heavy lifting alongside moving fast and moving like an athlete. Next set, same thing. Why am I breathing out my arse? Same thing, but upper body movement. So we're gonna go for neutral grip pull-ups. Sometimes when we're programming movements, when it comes to the A, B, C, we try to change grips. So if I've just done double overhand with my deadlifts, change into a neutral grip with my pull-ups, rather than doing another double overhand, it's actually a really good way to work different muscle groups. I wouldn't want to do like A, B, C, underhand, underhand, underhand. Just doesn't make sense. We want to change the grip every single one. What we're thinking about every single time that we do the rep is returning back to full hang. No short reps where we only get to about here and then we pull back up. That's half a rep. That isn't a pull-up. It's a half pull-up. Make sure you're down so that you're at full hang, full extension, right down at the bottom, and then pull right back up, chin to bar, and that's a pull-up. So onto the pull-ups, and we're gonna superset them with a dumbbell swing. I don't have any kettlebells in here. I would usually use a kettlebell, but I'm gonna do a dumbbell swing. So what we're thinking about when we're doing our kettlebell swings or our dumbbell swings is how can I use this extension through the hips as the power rather than swinging our arms. The arms are simply an anchor here. They're not actually really doing much other than holding the kettlebell or the dumbbell. So I grabbed a slightly heavier dumbbell for this one. Extend, extend. Power comes through the glute and hip extension. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create power through hip extension, moving horizontally. There's a lot of horizontal power needs to be created during a Hyrox, during your burpee broad jumps, during your sled push, and some of the other movements too. Okay, now we are jumping onto some single leg work, which is crucially important when it comes to any sort of athletic goal. I would argue anyone that's in the gym. My right foot is my dominant foot. My right leg is a lot stronger. Even when you look at it from a hypertrophy standpoint, the right quad is more pronounced than the left quad. Now, as long as there's not like a major imbalance here, where this leg can do 20 leg extensions at one week and this one can only do 5, then it's not as big as a problem as what you may think, but it doesn't mean you don't do your single leg work. So this superset that we're gonna go for now, we're gonna go for a B stance Romanian deadlift or a staggered stance Romanian deadlift. So that's one foot in front of the other. I'm gonna go up into the back toe and then I'm gonna deadlift down towards the ground, hinge at the hips, and then drive back up. I like to go up onto my back toe on the back foot just to create a little bit of instability. I'm not quite good enough to take the foot off the ground and do it like so. As you can see, I've just reintroduced these into my plan. And then we're gonna superset this with a little plyo movement. Now jumping on to our plyo movement, we're gonna do split squat jumps. I'm gonna maintain this position and I'm just gonna jump, jump, control, jump, control, jump, control. Swap legs, 7 reps on the other leg. Jump, control, jump, control, jump, control. Simple as that. These sorts of movements will help me generate control, stability through the hip. And the hip is like the unlock to all power. If you've got power and stability through your hip, then you've got a much more stable foundation to generate power through the quad, the hamstrings and the calves. As you could imagine, is super important when you're running. If your hips are just all over the place, unstable, not powerful, not coordinated, then everything just gets a little bit more jumbled up below you. Now for the slightly boring stuff. So I've got a tri-set right now of hanging leg raises, single leg glute bridge, and a single leg calf raise. All this stuff it's not sexy, it's not that fun, it's a little bit boring, but these are all the accessory muscles that hold everything else together. And we need it to be an efficient athlete who can run under stress, because what happens when the glutes are inactive? All the rest of the leg takes over and you end up super fatigued super quick. What happens if our calves aren't strong? Well, we take a lot of strain on the ankles and the Achilles and our lower body blows up. What happens if our core's not strong? Well, we end up just like an inflatable tube man, flapping about the place with no stability and a poor running form. Think of that tri-set just there as like an insurance policy. You know when your insurance policy comes out every single year and you see it come out your bank account and you're like, oh, fuck off, I've not even got anything from that. Well, you actually have, you just didn't know it. You just didn't see it because it wasn't sexy, it wasn't cool, it wasn't flashy, it was just floating in the background there doing its job, just in case shit hits the fan. And hopefully it doesn't, because you've already taken out your insurance policy. We're going on to the Hyrox finisher, but first, We're gonna do some bicep curls just because why the fuck not? Is there an incredible amount of like benefit to doing arms as a Hyrox athlete? You could argue grip strength for the farmer's walk, pulling the sled. There are other things which grip comes into, but for the most part, as long as you've got the time, there's no problem with having a little bit of an aesthetic aspect to your training if you're training for Hyrox. I love doing bicep curls. I love getting a pump on. I love the feeling of the blood flowing through your arms. It's just something that I've never been able to get away from, and I don't plan on getting away from it. Last part of the session is going to be the Hyrox finisher. Each of the components that we done in the initial part of the program were mostly focused on building strength and becoming a more robust Hyrox athlete, a more robust runner. Still trying to push strength numbers, still trying to always progressively overload and get better. For the most part, it's about making sure I perform at my best on race day and in my other sessions. But the finisher is all about building capacity up for the movement patterns that you're going to do in the race. So I wouldn't just chuck any old thing in here. It would have to be relevant to the stuff that I'm wanting to work on. Like right now, I wouldn't just go and chuck in, you know, a set of tricep extensions and I don't know, you name it, something random. So the movement patterns that we're going to be working on in this Hyrox finisher, I'm going to pick an erg, I'm going to pick a specific movement pattern, and then for my third movement, because this is a station that I believe I need some work on, is I'm going to do some more wall balls. So I'm trying to do wall balls in the majority of sessions, even if it means just doing a small amount, just to get used to that movement efficiency. So 250 ski, 12 burpee to plates, and then 12 wall balls at 9 kilograms, and I'm going to cycle through that 4 times. The purpose of these finishers is not just to end you, it's not just to absolutely murder you and kill you, it's to create progression on a weekly basis and to get better. So for example, if I'm doing 250, 12 and then 12 this week, next week I may progress that in such a way where I maybe go 14 and 14, or maybe then the next week I go 16 and 16, or I may increase the erg distance, I may increase the erg intensity. There's always got to be some sort of method of progressive overload on a week-to-week basis, rather than just doing the same thing every single week and expecting you to get better. So this is going to be done at race pace. Whoa, what the fuck? That wasn't meant to happen. Okay, let's try that again. Right, this is meant to be done at race pace. Double race pace, 250 meters. 3, 2, 1. $132 average. It's the target for the next few sets. Reasonably breathing after that. It was an hour and 9's work, which wouldn't have been an hour and 9 had I not been filming this. It probably would have been something like 50 minutes. And that's more than sufficient for the work that I had to do there. Some strength components, some accessory work, Hyrox circuit to end, and kind of just to let you into a little bit of the structure of my week. I'll do 2 of those sessions, full body push, full body pull. I'll run 3 times, and then I'll have a Hyrox session where I'll be running, but then also going into station work, so compromised running if you like. I'll then have maybe 1 or 2 bike sessions depending on time. I'm super consistent and strict around the work that I do myself, but I have like some additional sessions which I will do if I have the time. Like I run a business, I'm a dad, there's other things, the plates we need to spin, so it can't be like, you know, it's all or nothing, or I don't finish all my sessions, I'm a loser. Like it can't be like that. But I'll get the main important stuff done every single week by Sunday night, regardless of how it gets done, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. And then alongside that, not much else, just walking, occasionally a little bit of recovery stuff, but those 2 sessions are some of the main components of the work we do. Especially for the pro weights at Hyrox. If you've not got a reasonable level of strength, those weights will fold you in half. They will. The sled will fold you in half. The lunges will fold you in half. Even gripping the bastard in bloody farmer's walk will fold you in half. So you need a good level of strength. You cannot neglect your strength work. So yeah, make of that session what you will. Just a little bit of an insight into some of my training, the way that I coach some of my clients, and about 12 minutes of heavy breathing you've probably just heard, and it continues to go. But if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe. Please subscribe. We've got more good stuff coming. We've got more viewers, more subscribers. Everything seems to be growing, and the more people subscribe, as bad as it is to say, the more effort I'll put in. I'm joking, I've always put in loads of effort. And our editor Max puts in tons of effort as well. His stuff is class. I don't do this editing, it's not me.